or welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name is Steph. I'm so excited to talk to you about Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. This book was my first 5-star read of 2025, and it could not have been more of everything that I love about horror, social commentary, horror that is comedic and also social commentary is my jam. Is my everything. That is the perfect recipe for a 5-star for me. And Chuck Tingle, I'm in love with Chuck Tingle. Chuck Tingle did everything that I didn't know that I wanted in this book. This follows Misha, who is a writer in Hollywood. He is not openly out, but does have a boyfriend and has like a handful of people who he is close with, who he is out to, but he writes mostly queer characters. And so people kind of like, if you know, you pay attention, you kind of know. But the thing is that once again, his director, his agent, I guess like his producer, the person that he works for at the TV station, wants him to once again kill off his queer characters because queer trauma is what sells, not queer joy, unfortunately. And he's so tired of that. He is exhausted because he just wants his sapphic characters in his most recent series to just be happy. He wants to see on TV the thing that he wished he saw growing up. And I love the fact that this focused on getting joy. Joy from marginalized voices is something that we need to see more of. The fact that that's the moral of this horror standalone is kind of everything to me. It was masterfully done in my opinion. Also, the horror is my flavor. This is my flavor of monster, okay? I didn't know that monsters were going to be a thing in here, but what happens is that Misha's monsters that he writes in his TV series actually end up stalking him. They may or may not be real, who knows? That's the mystery that he has to solve, because what he thinks could be really crazed fans that are dressing like omnipresent evil spirits a la It, or aliens that think that they're doing humans a favor by sending them into the void of the universe, maybe crazed fans, but they're coming on a little too strong. And so Misha is freaking out. There's a side character in here that I absolutely adore. Tara, I think their name is an Ace character. I love that Tara was used to give Ace rep, but not just Ace rep, but to also give commentary on when queer representation or LGBTQ representation happens, that the A in LGBTQIA+ tends to be dropped. And also like recognizing that ace people don't have to be in a relationship or can be in a relationship and still be ace. Like there's a spectrum to being ace. That when queerness is commercialized and commodified, that ace is not taken into account and represented, because that is surface level representation, especially when the writing or the representation is not being done by people who are members of said community. There's going to be nuances that are missed. There's going to be things that are very surface level written. There's going to be things that just kind of like overshoot, like checking off boxes. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you know, again, you know what's good representation, you know what's bad representation, when it's something that you have to deal with every day. When you are a marginalized voice, you understand the systems of oppression and marginalization better than the people who perpetuate it, because it actively affects your life. And so you know what to look for and you know what's missing. And these characters call out what is missing in queer entertainment, non-binary and trans entertainment. And it's so good. It's so good. I love it. Misha's boyfriend, adorable. I loved him. I was a little sus at some points because I was like, why is he so perfect? He's too perfect. Sus behavior. I'm not going to tell you whether that behavior was justified or not, but I adored him. I adored them as a couple. I adored the ending. Just the way I was on the edge of my seat, kicking my feet like a little schoolgirl when the monsters would come and Misha was running for his life and screaming at them and didn't know whether he needed to confront them or whether he needed to run away. I was on the edge of my seat because the tension was so high. Like, this, to me, it's been a long time since a horror author was able to turn the tension to 10. And this did that for me. I absolutely loved it. The last time I feel like the tension in a horror book was a 10 might have been Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. And this was so good. Like, I want to force everyone I know to read this because it was impeccable. Now, here's the thing. I'm a picky bitch. And so I like to be very precise with my ratings. My story graph is where I give the more accurate ratings for what I think about books, because Goodreads only allows you to just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but story graph gives you the halves and quarters. If I'm going to be very specific with what I actually think this is, it's a 4.75, which I essentially just rounded up to a 5 because I still think about this every day and I loved it so much. The reason it was almost perfect, is because the climax for me happened earlier than the climax in the book. There are 2 scenes which are extremely pivotal here that I want to reference for this. One is when the moral of the story is brought to the forefront and is the focus of conversation from our main character, literally to the audience, and is like, this is why queer representation, queer voices, own voices, and LGBTQIA plus joy matters. It matters. So that part, with the horrific things that happen right before it, that to me was the climax. But I wasn't done yet. I was like, I think I have maybe 50 more pages in this book. So what else? What else could happen? And then the reason it didn't end right there where I thought it should have was because I can't tell you what other genre I feel like this falls into, because I feel like that would be a spoiler in some ways. I didn't see where this was going when it kind of incorporated a subgenre that I went, okay, that's interesting. I wasn't mad at it for doing that as an explanation for everything that happened, but I was like, that shouldn't be the climax. There should have been other things that happened. And it's okay. I would have been okay, like, not getting an explanation in some ways, because I feel like it just dragged out at that point, and they were trying to feel like the fact that it should have been the messaging and the way that the messaging was handled that might have been enough to resolve this, but it wasn't. We had to go a little bit deeper, and that's okay. That's okay. I understand what the author was trying to do in trying to make sure that there were no loopholes in the story by closing it off that way and giving us what I would consider a secondary climax. Unless there's a literary term for that I'm not familiar with. If that is the case, someone please let me know in the comments. But I don't think that I necessarily needed it. It was like there was a lull there for me between the climax that happened, and then after that, we had, like, the author took it to an extreme where characters were leaning into marginalized voices so hard that they were once again overshadowing those marginalized voices because of what the company thinks commodification should look like and representation should look like in order for it to be overly checking boxes. This book took queer voices on screen to 2 extremes of the spectrum, and I loved it for examining all of that in ways that were super interesting, made me upset, and super witty. Let me know if you read any other Chuck Tingle, because I need to read everything that they may have ever written, even though I know that their other stuff is technically a completely different vibe from this. They've earned my trust. They've earned my trust and they have my attention. I have links in the description so that you can follow me on all of my other platforms. I post videos whenever I feel like it. Thanks for watching. Bye!
Mr. Wonka worked the factory.